We are back on Stand with General Taylor, Attorney General Treg Taylor, State Attorney General for the state of Alaska. Such an honor to have him on here with us on Stand. General Taylor, on the previous segment, you had just teed up for us some of the incredible work that you and your staff have been doing in the Attorney General's office on behalf of the people of Alaska. You referenced some of the COVID litigation. You referenced some of the wins as it relates to the cruise ships issues, and you've also talked about what is a huge issue right now related to correspondence schools, which is something of great import for many Alaskans, because we all know that education is a big issue for all of us right now. So could you unpack each of those things and what you've been doing in those areas so that more Alaskans can hear about the incredible work your office has been doing?
Yeah, no, and I'll kind of go in order. I've been the Attorney General for 4 years, and as I said in the previous segment, it seems to have just overlapped directly with the Biden administration, which gave us plenty to do here, including defend against some of the COVID mandates that they were pushing out. And so we entered 5 major COVID mandate pieces of litigation. Of course, it wasn't Alaska going alone. One of the great parts about being the Attorney General during that time is I got to know my counterparts in the other states really well, and worked really well with each other. And had sort of a division of labor, because there's stuff coming out so fast that it was really easy to lose track of something or not notice something. And so I have 26 sets of eyes, 26 Attorney General with their eyes on it. It really helped us convert every situation. So the CMS mandate, which was basically mandating the vaccine for all healthcare workers, successful in getting that thrown out, which I think is huge. And then OSHA, that was another big piece of litigation, because they wanted to mandate any employer that had over 100 employees, that they were mandating that employer force all those employees to get the vaccine. And we were successful in that litigation. There was one that was directed at federal contractors. And so if you had no matter if you're just a mom and pop shop that had a federal contract, any federal contractor would have to mandate that all of their employees get the vaccine. And so again, working with other states, we were successful in getting that thrown out. And then the last one, Head Start, they're forcing everybody, teachers, students, Head Start program, to get the vaccine, and we successfully got that tossed. Now, the one we lost on, and we knew it was going to be an uphill battle, but we thought it was a worthy battle, and that was the vaccine requirement for all the military personnel. And that's because clearly the president has a lot of direct authority over military personnel. And so we knew that one was an uphill battle, and we fought that one. We lost in the courts, but it had the desired effect, because Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin rescinded that mandate soon after that litigation. We managed to put it out there in the media and sort of tried it in the American people's minds as well as the courts. And so that was the COVID litigation. So I think we saved a lot of people in this country from being required and forced to get the COVID shot and lose their jobs, which should never, ever, ever occur. And hopefully will never occur again. Hopefully we as a nation have learned that lesson.
Yeah, Treg, it reminds me of a phrase that Nikki and I will say to each other often, and I just want to remind our audience of it, that some causes are so worthy that it is noble even to fail in their pursuit. And so, as you were just saying, even though you knew it probably didn't have legal cause to be able to order the commander-in-chief to not administer the COVID shot on the troops, by pursuing that legal civil right for our men and women in service, we put so much social pressure on the Secretary of Defense that they were able to rescind it anyway. You knew you were probably going into a losing battle legally, but you won it in the court of public opinion, and therefore we were able to protect a civil right freedom for the men and women in uniform. And I appreciate that, because we know that we're not going to win every battle, but it's still noble to pursue some of these battles anyway. And that's what it means to take a stand. I appreciate that. You mentioned one on the other side of the break as well, which was about the cruise industry, which has such huge consequences for Alaska. What one was that about?
So that one was basically through the COVID mandate for requirements for vaccine, cruise ships, ports of entry, all the different requirements basically were going to shut the cruise industry. There was sort of a double whammy at this time, in that not only that, but for the Alaska cruise season, all of the Canadian ports were closed. And so that uh, under law, they had to have to stop at these foreign ports between in order to make the voyage to Alaska. And so it was twofold on that fight. We joined forces with Florida, which obviously has a big concern about cruise ship stoppage. And so we joined forces with Ashley Moody down in Florida, who's now the senator representing Florida. And we were successful in that litigation. And then we worked very closely with both of our congressional delegations to get waivers for that requirements of those acts that prevented cruise ships from coming directly from the Seattle ports to Alaska without stopping in the ports. And so that was a big win because, the Southeast, they don't have the timber industry that they used to have. And a lot of these small towns, a lot of these small businesses, small restaurants, they live and die by the cruise industry, and having that disrupted for multiple years in a row would have had devastating effects. I've already seen. I'm sitting in Juneau in my office here, and I can look at restaurants that no longer exist just because of the 1 year that they were unable to bring the cruise industry.
Wow.
And there's other litigation I could talk about too. That the state of defense stuff's really kind of interesting. It was the meat and potatoes of sort of Alaska's response to all the Biden executive orders and mandates directed in Alaska. If you'd like to
Yeah, please unpack that.
Yeah, so we knew right away that Alaska was going to be a target of the Biden administration. It made it. He did what he said he was going to do during this campaign. So we knew Alaska was going to be a target. So we came up with the idea of the Statehood Defense Fund. We went to the legislature for additional funding to help that fight because we knew the battle was coming. And we basically formed a group as Commissioner of DNR, Commissioner of Fish and Game, and Commissioner of DEC and myself. We met every week. We continue to meet every week on these issues to try to figure out what battles are coming, how to prepare for them, what science do we need Fish and Game to do or DEC to do in order to be able to win, be ultimately successful in these legal battles. And again, because of that extra funding that the legislature gave us to take that on, we've been very successful. We currently have over 80 lawsuits against the federal government. And the basis of statehood defense is, hey, Alaskans should decide the destiny of Alaska, right? Not a federal bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. And so this is all about making sure the feds respected the promises they made in Alaska statehood and allow Alaska to determine its future. And so that's sort of what statehood defense. Some of our big wins, it might not seem like a big deal to most people that aren't even know, but like the polar bear incidental take. If that had gone awry, we'd literally have to stop production on the North Slope because of polar bear critical habitat. We were successful in that. We were able to preserve and have enough capacity for that operation on North Slope to continue, and also to allow for Willow to go in. Because again, if that had gone a different way, Willow would never have been allowed to move. We kept commercial Chinook fishing going on in the Southeast Alaska. We took on some of the environmental groups that wanted to shut that down in the federal government. And then we have the critical habitat for ice seals. There's millions and millions of ice seals. It's a healthy population. But what the Biden administration was doing with all this critical habitat and endangered species listings is they were taking the science and they were modeling it out 100 years. So they're thinking 100 years, could ice seals be in danger? And of course, using their modeling and their logic and they came up with the fact, oh yeah, in 100 years, they're going to be a species that's almost extinct. And so we fought that. And if you look at the designation for what critical habitat does, it basically shuts down any type of commercial use of those waters or of the land that encompasses that critical habitat. And what's really unfair is that it encompassed like the entire coast of Alaska. Now, if you look at critical habitat on the East Coast, different story, right? Because again, Alaska is an easy target. So critical habitat for species like the Atlantic right whale, they're little tiny pockets of critical habitat that allow still commercial activity to continue to go on around it. But in Alaska, they were using that as a weapon. They were trying to weaponize critical habitat and prevent us from doing any additional mining in that critical habitat, any of the offshore drilling that may occur in the future. And so that was a big win for the state as well.
They were doing the same thing with how they were expanding definition of clean water, and anything that was essentially defined as a puddle became protected waters. And just these really expansive regulations. You heard you were talking about it. The governor was talking about it. Senator Sullivan was talking about it, about how expansive they made the regulatory authority to just really shut down and target everything in Alaska, to just turn us into a national park. It was their 30 by 30 agenda to have 30% of the United States water and land shut down by 2030, and the main place they were targeting was here. So, you were on full defense. It's you got to be that fighter pilot, but from the courtroom, for the state of Alaska.
Managing 80 pieces of litigation is no easy task. Luckily, I've got a great cohort of attorneys. A lot of people don't realize we do both the criminal prosecution side. Alaska is kind of unique, we do all criminal prosecution, at least all felonies. Some of the municipalities maybe some of the misdemeanors, but then the other half of the Department of Law does all the civil stuff. So all this defensive statement that went on was our folks, and with the additional funds from the legislature, we were able to bring in key outside counsel with the expertise to set some of these cases up for U.S. Supreme Court. And I still think that some of these lawsuits, we're still hoping some of these lawsuits get served in front of the U.S. Supreme Court being heard, because we desperately need to do that.
It would be good if they do, because I think we need the legal precedent to be able to stand on for 10th Amendment purposes for states' rights, so that we are able to draw that line in the sand. We're up on a break, so let's take the break, audience, and we'll come back with Treg Taylor on the other side. And Attorney General Taylor, we want to talk to you about education. And we know that Trump is looking to disband, or will be disbanding. I'm sure that there will be some legal challenges to that, to the Department of Education. We want to talk about how that's going to affect Alaska and some of the challenges that we've faced here in Alaska to homeschooling and private education and funding for education. We want to get all your thoughts on that on the other side of the break. So stand by. We'll be right back after this. You're on Stand with Kelly Nikki Tshibaka. At Holquist Homes, they believe in providing the highest level of quality at the lowest possible price. Over 40 years and 4,000 homes later, value and pride continue to be the core of their philosophy while building for Alaskan families. They currently have a variety of new developments in South Anchorage, Upper and Lower Hillside, and Eagle River. At Holquist Homes, they value the satisfaction of their buyers by building homes that their buyers are proud to own. Holquist Homes.